the year of France. Hear me out.
The year of what?
France, says
France?
the French woman. Yeah.
You're the country. It's in Europe, kind of near England. Okay.
Welcome. This is the Media Odyssey. This is Shapiro.
You said my name correctly. That is Marion Ranchet. Did I say your name correctly?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
What's happening on this week?
On this first episode, we're talking about why we're doing this podcast, how we came to do this podcast together, and we're going to do a wrap 2024 that is looking at the biggest stories of 2024. Honestly, I don't think we have enough time to do that. I could say all day speaking about that. But what we'll do is we'll take a look back at the predictions we had made a year ago and we'll score ourselves. I know it's tough for you. You always want to be right, but
Wait, to be honest, who's scoring who? Am I scoring you and you scoring me, or are we just gonna agree to let us score ourselves?
I think we need to be honest with each other, right? So yeah.
That's not in my rider. I did not agree to honesty on this podcast.
Yeah.
You met us. I am Evan Shapiro. As Marion said, I talk about the media. I write about the media from the United States perspective for the most part. Marion?
I'm French, living in Amsterdam, and I give a European take to the media industry.
And we first met at MIP TV in Cannes. Is that correct?
Yeah, 18 months ago.
And we started talking about the industry and how we each approach it. And we've gotten together a number of times since then. And then I begged you to do this podcast.
Yeah, you had to.
The last time we were in Cannes, actually, I think the third time we were in Cannes together, I begged you on a rooftop full of wine myself to do this podcast.
Yeah, you did. Sunshine, rosé. That was typical business doing in Cannes.
It is, actually. It is very typical. And this podcast is the outcome. So what do you think this podcast is about?
So this podcast is, I would say, number one, bridging Europe and US in a way, spending, good time with you, brainstorming on things. I think it is valuable for folks to engage with us in a different way, right? We write a lot. Hopefully people have time to read us, but I love the idea of us bringing them more value.
You have a really good newsletter called Streaming Made Easy.
Yeah, on Substack.
And I'm an avid reader, and you've had it for how long?
It's been 2 years. This is 2 years in December. Yeah.
How are you liking writing a Substack newsletter?
I love it, but it is a lot of work. I mean, week in, week out, but I've been consistent. I've never missed a week. That's
impressive. In 2 years, you've never missed a week?
Pretty much, no. Or, maybe I'm going to miss the next few weeks. I think I need some time off. But how about yours? Because, one of the reasons that I chose Substack is that I could see that folks like you were there. I think that was, a big draw. And we actually recommend one another, which I think is fantastic, and it's a great way to collaborate.
It's a big way newsletters find audiences is being recommended by other newsletters. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I started my newsletter, Media War and Peace, about 2 years ago, actually almost 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's what you had said.
And I think I've written close to 300 pieces. So I don't know that I've never missed a week. Especially in the last couple of years, I've actually been in and out of the hospital. So there was times where I think maybe I didn't publish, but I do get almost every week. And I love doing it. It's, it was what transformed me from an executive to a creator in the creator economy, which you and I have discussed a lot of times. And I just adore it. It's my favored form of expression is the written word. So I love writing it as well.
So we could have left it at writing on LinkedIn. But there's so many things you can say in, 200, 300 words, right? So I think the reason why you did this, I did it as well, was to go deeper on topics from the industry, but also to have, a closer relationship with the audience. Because let's be honest, on LinkedIn, we're kind of very much under the thumb of, LinkedIn, the algorithm, the limitation of the platform, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the newsletter was about, to your point, being able to dig deeper, but also I have these weird infographics I tend to make with my writing, and you can only put one, and I don't love how the tiles on LinkedIn. So it was actually a pretty much of a creative choice. Actually, to be blunt, I wrote a book proposal and it got turned down by everybody. And then I turned that into the first 5 posts of my newsletter, and it kind of took off from there, which was a lot of fun. And to be blunt, better than writing a book, because I can change it in case something goes wrong, which you can't do with a book.
Yeah, and aside from changing, it's more instant. You have that one-on-one relationship. We see folks commenting, whether that's LinkedIn or the newsletter, and I think that's incredibly valuable. So,
yeah. So I begged you to do this podcast because I thought there was a different way for us to go about what we did, most notably the way we talk about the media when we get together. And so you have your point of view, I have my point of view for various different reasons. And I think we come to it not necessarily with differences in maybe outcomes that we would expect, but completely different points of view of reference. So, we can use the recent Disco Brothers spin out of cable as an example, where you took it from the Sky perspective.
Yeah.
And
I did not even cover the US.
Right, that's exactly right. And I looked at it from the NBA, from the perspective of how the NBA basically forced this decision. So today, we're going to look at all of 2024. We're going to do Wrapped 2024 for our first episode. I'm going to look at it from the US point of view, or from my point of view, actually, because I actually have an interesting way into it. And you're going to look at it from your distinctly European view. Yeah?
Yeah, 100%. I'm game. Let's get started.
Are we doing this through the lens of our predictions from last year? That's what it seemed to me. The gauntlet that you threw down in the teaser that we made was that we were going to look at how we did. I am prepared to do that. I'm also prepared with a list of topics that I thought were the biggest stories. So however you want to go about it, I'm going to come out the victor this episode of the podcast.
So we can go either way. The reason why I was suggesting, let's look back a little is that, one might argue that it's easy to give predictions and then you'll never look back, right? So I quite like the idea of, quickly looking at Judgment Day. Having said that, I'm sure that there's things that happened this year that, maybe we did not foresee, or not to that extent. No. And so I think we can kind of, mix it up a little.
Okay, great. Well, why don't we start? We agreed we would ping pong.
Yeah.
That we would go back and forth. Why don't you start with a topic or a prediction that was from 2024 that you'd like to discuss and either look at our mutual performance on, or discuss as a topic, as a big influential topic of 2024.
Cool. So one I had was free streaming for broadcasters. One of my 5 predictions, I only made 5, was to say that these guys would, heavily invest in kind of beefing up their AVOD and fast hubs, right? The idea being that they make that move from being, a live TV channel, which has a bit of an extension hub. No, it's a hub of its own. So some people will go on live TV and in those hubs. Some people will only go in those hubs. And so I will I will pat myself on this one because it did happen. Like most of the European broadcasters.
So give us some examples. Yeah. So for those who aren't privy to the European market, give us some examples of moves that were made this year.
Yeah. So one move in France, M6 actually did a deal with Pluto. They brought in, I would say, 10 to 15 fast channels from these guys within their hub. They took some of their content and put those as fast channels on Pluto TV France. Then, in Germany, Join, which is ProSieben, the commercial broadcaster. They've been at this for many years. They have over 60 channels. They have, a very deep AVOD catalog. If you look at the UK market, ITVX has been doing this for the last 2 years as well. It's very much, this master hub where you can watch, all the content that you want, whether that was live or not.
And ITV in particular, if you talk about AVOD and FAST, I think sometimes we talk exclusively about FAST and FAST platforms that also have AVOD, or some other apps that live on connected televisions. But I think you have to include the biggest app on television, which is YouTube. And so that is an AVOD product.
Yeah.
There is also a subscription product, but that is mostly an AVOD product, the largest AVOD product on the face of the earth, one of the largest advertising platforms on the face of the earth. And I think if you include that, ITV just made a huge announcement. So I think your prediction even came truer, made a huge announcement that they're going to put a lot of content on YouTube starting next year. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. So I think to your point, it's not so much about just making sure everyone is coming to them. It's making sure that their content is going to everyone, everywhere where people, actually hang out and spend time watching content. So.
Yeah, and by the way, your prediction about the M6s of the world came true, but it also came true here. Sling has a major FAST platform on the front end of their paid service, and DirecTV now has a big FAST service, I think 100 channels on the front end of their paid product as well. So yeah, that was a very good prediction. You should pat yourself on the back.
Okay, cool. I'll take this
one. Very, very true. Oh, and by the way, a really good example of you looked at the European market, and most of the players that you talked about are in the commercial broadcasting or commercial distribution business. Yeah. Even ITV, which is a public broadcaster, they are an ad seller, and they needed the additional inventory to sell. So it did translate to this side of the Atlantic as well. So it's one of those things you can identify in one, and it can apply to both. So good job.
What's interesting about the example you gave is that I'm a big believer in seeing free streaming within pay TV environments. So what you've done, what you've seen this year in the US, we're starting to see it. It's not changing as fast as it should, in my opinion. But you're seeing more pay TV platforms bringing in AVOD and fast content. The idea is, bring more value to folks to keep them in.
All right. Well, that leads me to a sneak peek of our next episode, which is we're going to be giving predictions for 2025. And one of my predictions for 2025 is the melding of all of these models.
Yeah.
That in the moments to get up to the screen, AVOD, fast, SVOD with ads, all of that stuff is going to meld much more into singular choices of bundles, like what DirecTV is doing and what M6 is doing. So that's a sneak peek. That's next episode. This is our 2024 wrapped episode. I'm going to give a prediction since you gave a prediction. One of my biggest predictions of the year was that a large tech company will buy one of the prominent programming groups. And I think there are many out there right now who will say, well, that didn't come true. None of the big tech companies bought any of the traditional media companies. And I'm going to say, aha, you're incorrect. If you don't think that Oracle now owns Paramount, you're not paying attention. The idea here is to update and transform Paramount using technology. And so perhaps it isn't a direct ownership, but through the board and through the influence of money, they are going to control that company. And I think there will be some out there who say it's a stretch, but I think it's an absolute first step to what I think will be many deals, especially given the new shape of regulatory perspective in Washington over the next 4 years at least. I don't think you're going to see much blocking of big tech when they want to make purchases like Amazon did of MGM, or let's say Apple wants to buy Disco Brothers, Warner Brothers Discovery. I don't think you'll see a regulatory standoff there the way you might have in previous administrations. So I do think the Oracle purchase of Paramount it makes my prediction true. I'll take all challengers. I'm wondering what you think.
No, absolutely. I think one of the first statements when the purchase was announced, he actually used that word, right? That he was looking to take this company and make it become a tech company. So maybe we can talk about, that's going to be a discussion maybe for next year, but it will be interesting to see if that's possible. Can you transform a US studio into a technology company just because you have the money to do that and because in the background you have a technology company? It's a bit of a question mark.
Disney did try to do that, with buying ML Tech and being one of the lead investors in Hulu, and then eventually owning Hulu. They very much wanted to do that. They have not succeeded in transforming into a tech company. I think Netflix has succeeded in changing from a tech company into a content company more successfully than anybody has gone the other way.
Yeah. 100%
So
aligned.
anyway, I think the reason I pointed out in particular is I think it portends more acquisitions and more M&E, in particular in the entertainment world, M&A, in the M&E world in 2025. It's a prediction that I'll make. But also, I think the big tech investment in big media is, I think, just starting.
Cool. Do we want to do another one we predicted that pan out or not? And then we move on to kind of the big stories of the year for both of us?
Let's go that.
Okay, cool.
So another prediction you made that either did or did not come true?
I'm going to choose one that did not come through completely.
Oh, brave of you. Good for
I'm
you.
brave. I'm not trying to win this. So
how un-American of you.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I had made the prediction that Samsung, with Samsung TV Plus, would be investing big money in content this year. And in particular, I had said live events, sports, or something, a bit more, reality TV, etc. I was right to some extent because I've seen them, license third-party content, very much, premium and fresh TV shows, etc., and movies. They've made a few deals to bring that live feel to it. I think they bought a few weeks ago the rights to a Korean K-content, awards event. But yeah, they haven't made big moves. And the move I had in my head was something a la Netflix, where, they would be live streaming something sports related that is big. So I would say I'm half wrong. I think I'll keep this one for next year because we just heard about Roku buying the X Games to build a fast channel, bring AVOD content to their, 85 million plus monthly active users. So yeah, I'll keep this one for next year.
And by the way, that was a sports franchise that was looking for a home for a minute. I think Roku has done an excellent job, particularly in sports, in creating a platform where you can find a lot of sports very quickly, even if it's not on a service that they run. Yeah. So like they can get you quickly from point A to point B. I think that's one of the reasons why they have so many users in the US is it's very easy to navigate as a consumer. Especially if you're not necessarily all that tech savvy. But I also think, I was part of a deal, and I said this on LinkedIn, so this is not breaking any news, to help bring Letterman to Samsung exclusively for a couple of years. And that was a good deal, I think, from both parties. And they have a deal with Conan in place as well. So they have been making moves in exclusive content. I think they're a team, without breaking any privacy. I think they're a team to watch with regards to that moving forward. I think they will continue to make smart moves around investments in programming that enhance the brand. The largest maker of televisions on the face of the earth, the largest maker of phones, I believe, on the face of the earth as well. And so being able to program across both of those platforms, they also program on refrigerators. You can watch the Letterman channel on a refrigerator. So I think your prediction was partly right. I would give it more than you might think, but also I think it will continue to be true on a moving forward basis.
Honestly, I think these guys, they need to convince, stakeholders internally, because you've said it, it's the biggest TV manufacturer in the world. Right. It's very much a hardware-led business. And these moves, this is the new Samsung, right? Being, software first, putting content on top. I think that's a tricky conversation.
And then that gets to the larger conversation between Roku and Samsung, which is, we talked about Roku as a programmer, and then we talked about Samsung as a programmer, but Roku's OS is a substantially larger platform than Samsung's. And many of the Samsung TVs in the US have a Roku operating system operating on them because of an external device. And so I think increasingly, the owner of the platform is going to have substantially more say, not just in what gets watched. I think you're going to have all content there, but in the exploitation, most notably the advertising exploitation on these platforms is going to be increasingly in the hands of the OS. And that's why you see Trade Desk starting an operating system. That's why, Samsung has designs on moving Tizen beyond Samsung devices. That's why Google is in the operating system business. That's why Amazon puts so much money and time and effort into Fire, because that's where the riches are going to be held in the next generation of television.
Cool. So let's go to yours. What's your other prediction?
So this is another prediction. So I was going to give another one where I was right.
Yeah, well, of course.
But I've chosen to choose one where I was wrong, which is I said there was going to be a lot more M&A in this year than actually happened. I think the Oracle purchase of Paramount is the big one. Here at the end of the year, OMG buying IPG is a big, huge one that kind of saves this prediction to a certain extent. I don't think I took into account the election yearness of it all. When I made that prediction, it just felt like there was a lot of money that wanted to get in action. And I think it's still sitting there. So I do think now, especially since there is going to be a looser regulatory atmosphere in the United States, and I think globally, for many different reasons, but mostly for political reasons, I think you're going to see a tremendous amount more of M&A action in M&E. And I think, in particular, I think you're going to see technology companies buy entertainment companies. I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix, who is now at an all-time high valuation, looks to buy something in gaming or in music or a large piece of IP that comes with a subscriber base. But I do think you'll see more action next year. So I'm delaying my prediction again.
Cool. Gaming, Netflix, I don't know, right? Haven't they shut down, a studio and, laid off a few folks?
But they hired a big new head of gaming, and I think that's why they shut it down. That is his influence there, and it'll be a recalibration. And I think if you look at Netflix, which is now worth $400 billion, and you look at Roblox, which is worth around $20 or $30 billion and has never been profitable, that's a real nice marriage. Two different products, one much more as a purchase as you go, which is something that Netflix has not excelled at. But the brand extensions, just for its own franchises there of Stranger Things and all the other IP that they own, would work out really well. Crucially, though, both businesses need to amplify their advertising businesses. And I think together there's a stronger sell out in the marketplace. But that's just an example of something they could now afford because they're at the height of their valuation that they couldn't have otherwise, I think, 2 years ago, been able to look at. I think, interestingly enough, even though Spotify is now at its all-time high valuation, Spotify, Netflix marriage, oh my goodness, it would be difficult for regulatory reasons, but far less so moving forward. So I think Netflix getting into the music business would be very, very interesting because it's one of those unbreakable subscriptions that they don't have currently. So anyway, that's one example. I do think Apple looks like a bigger buyer to me, and Microsoft, they just ingested Activision. Are they interested in getting into more deep into the living room, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay, we are getting close to the end. If you had to, find one thing that surprised you this year, out of something you did not expect, what would that be?
I honestly did not expect Spotify to have the year that they would have. I don't think they had ever been profitable for a year. I think they'll probably wind up being profitable this year for the entire year, which I think is the first time that that's ever happened. Certainly one of the first times, if it's not the first time. But they've had, I think, 4 profitable quarters in a row now. So not in a calendar year, but in a row. They had a really bad 2022-23 where they were firing people every couple of months. They were losing money. their overhead with regards to the rights that they have to pay for music, less so podcasting, but mostly for music. It's the more they play music, the higher that cost goes. Their advertising business wasn't growing that fast, but they've really grown the paid subscriber business, even from a really high. I think they have 600. I don't know how many they have right now, but a lot. And their churn is very, very low. Their ad business still needs to grow faster, but I'm very
100%.
impressed with how that company has managed itself over the last 12 months. And I would not have expected that from that management team, to be blunt.
Well, so mine.
How about, right. I'm sorry. How
Yeah.
about yours? What
No,
is
it's
the thing
okay.
that surprised you?
So, the year of France. Hear me out.
The year of
Because
what?
France, says the
France?
French woman. Yeah.
You're the country. It's in Europe, kind of near England.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Go
So
on.
this market, so it's my market. I don't live there anymore, but it's my home country. It's my market. It's one of the markets that I, cover as part of, my newsletter, but also my consultancy. And every time everyone's like, oh, France, it's a black box. It's so complicated. There's a lot of that going on, which, it's good business for me because I help people understand that very tricky markets.
There you
At
go.
the end of the year, one of my clients said, oh man, for the first time, I think I understand France a bit more. And this is where there's the most opportunity, not just because of me. I did do my part. But what I've seen this past year is a thriving market, very innovative. I'm going to say it, out of the EU5 markets, it's been the most impressive. Let me give you a few examples. We started in Jan with the TF1 Plus, which is the French broadcaster who relaunched and made the move from broadcaster to streamer. The access.
Yeah, I had the woman who runs that
Claire
on
Bessini, the MD.
on stage with me at MIPCOM, and she's incredible, and they're doing an amazing job. And another good example of what you were saying earlier.
Amazing. So you have that. They have over 30 million monthly, active users. They use the word streamers now, which is very interesting. Number 2, we have M6, the other French broadcaster, did the same move, relaunched its streaming business. Canal Plus, just got listed at the London Stock Exchange. It's becoming its own thing. It is one of the few stories of, pay TV businesses, growing. So, and, last but not least, we've had the Olympics. It was amazing.
Huge.
And I was very proud of France Télévisions, which is the public service broadcaster, because I looked at, their coverage and the coverage by the BBC. And okay, granted, it was at Paris, so I'm sure the BBC did a great job when it was London. But the number of feeds, all the coverage, all of the things that were done, were, amazing.
Well, and it was a global streaming sports phenomenon in a way that the Olympics have been building towards this, and the Super Bowl has been building towards this, and all major FIFA and all of them have been building towards this. But this was the one where it felt like one big product across digital and traditional television, and everybody in the world got it. It really helped that it was in Paris, which is a great media city and close enough to the United States for it to kind of work out in prime time here. So it worked out really, really
100%.
well.
But again, the idea of, at the core of this, the idea of using the city as, where the event was taking place and not just in the stadium. I mean, that was amazing. So
it was a major victory.
That was the year of France. And we'll talk about predictions for 2025, but I think there's a lot more stuff coming.
I think rather than do what we were going to do, which is talk about CES, because CES hasn't happened yet. I'm going to be at CES. Are you going to CES?
No. So the thing with CES, every time I want to go, every time somehow I don't make it happen. I think there's a bit of, Vegas.
But you're not going. You're not
after
going.
Christmas.
We get it. We understand why you're not going, but you don't get to talk about it then. So
no, I will cover it from my living room like I did this year. And
right.
Yeah.
But I have things to plug. I am going to be
cool.
Working with a couple of different folks there. So I hope to see you there in one way, shape, or form, or fashion or another. So there, I'm doing a couple of things. You should look for me there. It's all over my LinkedIn. I don't want to get too specific. I will say I am dropping my top 10 list, predictions for 2025, the week before CES. And we will be dropping our next episode the week of CES.
Yes.
Towards the end of it on the 9th. And that will be our predictions for 2025, yes?
Yeah.
We're going to do 10 each. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
I think we're going to need 2 episodes for that. So I think we're probably going to stretch the top 10 into 2 episodes. So on the 9th and the 16th, look for our top 5 and then next 5, or probably bottom 5 and then next 5 predictions for 2025. I thought this went well.
Yeah, really well. I think, honestly, there's so much we could cover. It's tricky, right?
We got a lot we did not cover. You and I both have a lot we did not talk about this week.
100%.
That we could have talked about this week. So we'll save it for a future episode. We'll work it into the rest of the year. But next week, we're going to do a top 5 and then next 5, or first 5 and then second 5 predictions for 2025 next week on the pod, and then the following week on the pod. But in the meantime, subscribe to this podcast, tell people about it, but also subscribe to your newsletter. Marion, what's the name of your newsletter again?
Oh, yeah, Streaming Made Easy on Substack. How about yours?
And, mine is Media War and Peace, also on Substack. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon, guys.